Hey Trekkies, Cristian Fox here with another video for you. Today, I want to talk about prefixes in Star Trek. If you've watched any amount of Trek, then you've probably heard heroic characters like Captain Kirk or Captain Picard saying cool sounding things like, I'm Captain whatever of the U.S.S. Enterprise, or seen ships with NCC or NX on them. But what does it actually mean? First up, let's talk U.S.S. Arguably, the most famous usage of U.S.S. before a ship is the U.S.S. Enterprise NCC 1701. No bloody A, no bloody B, no bloody. Well, you get the idea. Unlike NCC, which we'll get to in a bit, there isn't too much debate around the meaning of USS despite it not ever officially being explained. It most likely stands for United Starship. In the very first episode, Captain Pike calls the Enterprise the United Spaceship Enterprise, but by the time of court martial, it's the United Starship Enterprise. USS being United Starship makes the most sense given that Starfleet ships are mostly referred to as starships. And yes, this is the case even though Starship is typically one word, as you can see on the screen behind Kirk and Commodore Stone that has Starship as two separate words. It's an odd choice, it's a weird choice, and something like United System Ship or United Starfleet Ship would make a lot more sense. But such is the show, and they definitely didn't consult me or other fans. So, not super complicated. But don't worry, NCC is where the real fun is at. NCC is such a complicated one because the meaning of NCC, like the U.S.S, is never explained or identified on screen, and there is so much conflicting information. Because of this, there's a lot of debate around what it actually stands for. The great debate seems to be between Naval Construction Contract and Naval Construction Code. In my short about this, I argued that Naval Construction Code, which apparently comes from the novel Best Destiny, made the most sense because having a letter that means contract on a ship's hull seems very odd. I viewed Naval Construction Contract as the work order for the ship, and then the code is what is given once the construction is complete. But I am willing to concede that it is in fact Naval Construction Contract, as 90% of the comments were saying it's contract based on the blueprints of the 1701 that were released in the 70s, as well as first-hand encounters with the late, great Gene Roddenberry. I've also come across Navy Curtis Craft, which comes from the making of Star Trek and the second season's writer's guide. Curtis is apparently the name of the company that builds the ships, but this hasn't gotten too much attention. So therefore, I will officially say it is, in fact, Naval Construction Contract, officially changing Yelling About Star Trek's stance on the matter. All right, let's relax a bit and talk about the last Starfleet prefix, one that isn't debated, NX. In Trek canon and in real life, NX is a prefix used for experimental or prototype ships and sometimes for ships that are the first of its class. Although not officially stated on screen, it's widely assumed that NX stands for Naval Experimental. This is also apparently stated in the making of Star Trek from 1986. This makes sense given that Starfleet is a space navy and that X is used in real-life agencies to denote that something is experimental. I remember in the 2015-2016-ish era when it was discovered that Nintendo was calling their new console, the now classic Switch, Nintendo NX. I remember this specifically because I kept calling it Nintendo's first Warp 5 console. But I digress. Two famous examples of NX in Star Trek are the USS Excelsior NX-2000 with its experimental transwarp drive from the Search for Spock, and the USS Defiant NX-74205 from Deep Space Nine. Of course, there's also the even more famous NX-01 Enterprise from the aptly named series Enterprise set in the 22nd century. Although it's a little bit different in that it's the first in the NX class and not just used to denote that it's an experimental ship with the first ever Warp 5 engine. I assume that there is a connection between the NX class and the prefix NX used in the 23rd century and beyond, but there's nothing stated on screen and Memory Alpha doesn't even mention any sort of connection. Now for something that's definitely not Starfleet, but Starfleet adjacent, I.S.S. In the classic TOS episode Mirror Mirror, we are introduced to the evil universe and to the evil enterprise, the I.S.S. Enterprise. But what does I.S.S. stand for? Well, it simply stands for Imperial Starship. This is confirmed on screen in the Enterprise episode In a Mirror Darkly, Part 2, and a prop from the episode. In that episode, which takes place entirely in the Mirror universe, we are treated to plenty of shots aboard the I.S.S. Avengers Bridge with the ship's dedication plaque in the background. While too blurry to actually decipher on screen, the plaque reads Imperial Starship. The dedication plaque itself comes from Michael and Denise Okuda's personal collection, which was auctioned by Prop Store in 2024. This also again confirms once and for all that even though Starship is one word, the two S's mean Starship. Well, there you have it, Starfleet prefixes explained. But what about you? What questions do you have? Let me know in the comments below, and until next time, I shall see you out there. That away.